Hey everybody, I'm just doing some random thoughts on my YouTube page. I do some random realtor thoughts, but this is more related to pickleball. And I went to play pickleball today. I wasn't actually sure that I, could play. I've got this thing in Dallas on the weekend and I woke up and my foot was hurting me. I'm sure it's just an arthritic thing after 45 years of doing plyometrics and so forth for racquetball. But, I'm out here playing and I'm playing with this, really good guy, friend of mine. And, we weren't playing amazing, and the other team was up like 8-1. And then somehow, my partner and I just started playing pretty well. And, those of you that have played with me as a partner know that when my partner misses a shot, oftentimes I'll say, my bad, because I'm always thinking back to like, what could I have done 3 shots ago? What could I have done differently 3 shots ago that would have not put my partner in that predicament to have missed that last shot, right? And oftentimes my partner's like, it's not your fault, but I always analyze the game that way. And when I was playing the Pro Tour, even when I would win tournaments, I always felt lucky. I felt like, I knew that I, had trained and, worked with the strength and conditioning coach and did all the right things and drilled and so forth. But even when I would win, I would be on the plane going over all the things I had done wrong. I really never celebrated my victories, even at the national level or world championship level. I was on the plane going home already planning for the next event, right? So, and I felt like that always kept me humbled, kept me focused. I never got high in victory and I never got too low in defeat. Of course, I don't like losing, but, I never celebrated my wins, right? And, so we're playing this morning and we're not doing well. We come back and the match ends up, so we're down 8-2, then we're up 9-8. It kind of went back and forth to 13-11, but we lost, okay? And, this used to happen to me in racquetball a lot. I'd beat somebody and, they'd come within earshot after the match and they'd go, oh, mommy just didn't play well today. Her back was bothering her. Or, say something to the person that had just beaten them to make them feel like they didn't earn their victory, right? And I always hated that. I never did that to anybody. And, I don't do it now. And oftentimes you'll see me throw my hands in the air like, oh, that's me saying, oh, I'm so lucky I won that, right? It's not me saying, oh, this is so easy. I never have that mentality. But today, after we lost the game, but it was close, one of the opponents was saying, oh my God, that was a great game. And the other one took the approach to say, loud enough so my partner and I could hear, mainly me, because my partner had kind of walked off to my other side. But, this opponent says, oh, well, to his partner, he says, they didn't do anything to, they didn't play well. They didn't do anything great to make that comeback. We just didn't play well. We made a lot of mistakes. They didn't do anything to pressure us. We just made mistakes. So I told him, I said, oh, well, maybe you should watch that on video. And, he kind of continued on and I said, so let me get this straight. So when you were up 8-1 or 8-2, it was because you were playing amazing. But then when we went on a run, it was only because you were making mistakes. And someone told me once, I was kind of doing my usual, not because I think I'm so great, but I was doing my usual, I was lucky to win that one. And my friend, Kit Lawson, a good friend of mine, he and his wife, says, Cheryl, you never give yourself credit. You're playing well, so you're putting your opponent under a lot of pressure, and that's why they're missing shots. But I never looked at it that way. I always thought like, oh, I'm just lucky, And again, it's not that I think my approach was so amazing or that I'm this amazing person. It's just that for me, that worked because if I ever thought to myself that, oh, I'm so great, I wasn't going to come in prepared for the next event, right? So Um, anyway, I didn't like that this guy said this. And, I basically told him, and then he kind of backed off like, oh, well, we all make mistakes. And I told him, well, but you already said that we didn't do anything to earn that comeback. It was just that you played badly. So you could turn that around and say, well, then we played badly when you went up 8-1. You didn't do anything great, but we just didn't play well. But I would never do that because that's like so disrespectful. And it really made me flash back to a couple of people. Most of the girls I played on the tour were amazing. But there were always a couple that had that excuse, that defense mechanism of, well, and in this case we lost, but usually in racquetball it would come out like when I won, then, well, I was off my game, I was hurt, I was this, I was that, Everybody gets hurt. Everybody plays with something going on. Everybody has something happening that could affect their play, but when you put yourself on the court, and this is what I try to teach the kids that I coach, when you put yourself on the court, whether it's in racquetball or any sport, or you're in a tournament and you're going to record duper scores, you put yourself out there, you lose, your rating's going to take a hit, or your ego's going to take a hit, or what have you. But you know what? If you know how to handle it well and you give your opponent credit, even if you lose, you're going to be able to move on faster, get over your loss faster, and probably be a better player as a result, right? So I didn't like that this morning. I hope that doesn't happen again. I'm going to continue to do what I do and try to make myself better. And I'm always going to give my opponents credit. And I've always respected everyone that I play, whether it's the first round or the finals. And I would lose sleep over that first round opponent, even though everybody else said, no, you're not going to have any problem with that person. I always thought I would, because that kept me on my toes. And when I was lucky to win a tight game like I didn't this morning, but like my opponent did this morning, I'm certainly not going to go and try to diminish their comeback or maybe their victory in any way. And I'm going to continue to be me and respect everybody I play, and not be too high in victory and not be too low in defeat. Random thoughts that took 7 minutes and 35 seconds. See you on the courts.